Om Dare Du Dare Du Re Soha. Om Dare Du Dare Du Re Soha. Om Dare Du Dare Du Re Soha. Om Dare Du Dare.
It's so good to be here with you, even virtually. I am recording this before I leave for India at the time of this teaching that will be broadcast. I will be, where will I be? I think I'll be in Delhi, arriving in Delhi. So a real joy to be able to travel to India. We're going to spend some time up in Ladakh, in the northernmost part of India, to see how we can support some people there in treating people with substance use disorders. And then, of course, we'll also get some time to visit these wonderful monasteries and engage with this culture. It's really a lot like being in Tibet. It's on the border of Tibet, and the culture there is very much of the Tibetan Buddhist culture and the great monasteries that are there. So looking forward to that opportunity. Then we'll spend a little time in Dharamsala. We'll also get to visit Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo and stay a night at her nunnery. What a gift. Very, very grateful. And then we'll have a few days in Delhi before we head back home. So we'll be gone for about 3 weeks. And at the time of this broadcast, I'll be in transit or maybe sleeping in Delhi. I will plan on teaching next week live online from Ladakh. So I hope that it all works out. We have internet and everything goes well. So today, I wanted to unpack a bit more on the teachings of the path of the Bodhisattva. So we've walked through this Four Noble Truths with His Holiness, just elucidating very clear points around the suffering, the very nature of suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation, and into this path of liberation, this path of freedom, fourth noble point. And so we've already covered quite a bit of that ground, and last week His Holiness tapped into the key points of the Mahayana path. This is the path of the Bodhisattva. This is a path born of the inspiration to liberate all beings from suffering. This motivation, the Mahakaruna, the great compassion, is the driving force for this particular path. And this is the path of becoming a Buddha. And in the process, it's fueled by this incredible state of compassion that cannot stand that anyone suffered. And that as we cultivate our path of freedom, it's motivated so we can be of ultimate benefit to all. Where His Holiness left off is that this is a path of cultivation of merit and wisdom. They're called the two accumulations. These two accumulations are the accumulations of Buddhahood, of merit and of wisdom. The path of merit and wisdom, I think, is really attainable and accessible in a graduated way. If we look at the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections. So the 6 perfections would be the method and wisdom, again, these accumulations, that we can engage in daily basis that will help us cultivate these qualities of a bodhisattva. So I did want to touch on those, even though they're not in this particular text. I think it's of great value to know the 6 perfections, to engage with them and see how we can put them into our lives on a daily basis. The screen I left up here is one that we took refuge and we cultivated bodhicitta. I left it up because I wanted to share that right here in our refuge and bodhicitta motivation prayer that we say before the beginning of a teaching and our practices includes these 6 perfections. So I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. This is our refuge. And then we get into through the positive potential, right? The positive potential, this incredible merit, this good karmic imprint, the potentials of awakening that I create by practicing generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. These are the 6 perfections. They're also called the 6 far-reaching attitudes. And so sometimes you'll actually see this written as positive potential I create by practicing generosity and the other far-reaching attitudes. So that would be the other 5. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. And so embedded right here is the Bodhisattva path. It is right here that we are making this commitment and outlining the opportunity of how we cultivate this positive potential through these far-reaching attitudes. Generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, sometimes called enthusiastic perseverance, concentration, and wisdom. Now, these are not linear. We cultivate not just one at a time. We can cultivate them all. They're intertwined and they help and support each other. If I can sometimes maybe focus on one for a day or a week, I can start to see how the others will bring their qualities into the one that I'm cultivating or focusing on at a particular time. You'll notice how they come in clusters and how they support each other. So let's just talk about them for a moment. The Noble Eightfold Path, that is the path of liberation, the 4th Noble Truth from Theravadan teaching. We'll have this Noble Eightfold Path that we talked about last time. And each of the 8, if we categorize them, they're going to be 3 categories: ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So it's usually presented wisdom, and then ethics, and then concentration. So we have right view, and we have right intention. Those would be in the wisdom area. And right speech, right action, right livelihood, they'll be in the ethics. And then we have right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So those would be in the concentration, the meditative stability section. So essentially, these 3 higher trainings, ethics, concentration, wisdom, combine to be the path of liberation, path of awakening. And sometimes presented in a Dzogchen view of right view. So you maintain the view. So the view of a Buddha, the view. So that would be wisdom. And so the view, meditation, concentration, and ethics. So sometimes presented the other way. But it's always the same combination. Mental stability, meditation is required to have this mental stability, this mindfulness, this presence of mind, the ability to tame, train, and transcend. Ethics, foundation of all spiritual growth. Without any ethics, it's like pouring water on a rock. All these teachings will not matter much. All the practice will not matter much. And then wisdom. Wisdom is the whole, ultimately, of awakening, the wisdom that recognizes the true nature of self and your experience, that is what liberates. That is how we become Buddhas. It's how we become Arhats. It's how we free ourselves from samsara. So now if we look at the 6 perfections, you're going to see those 3 embedded within these 6, and they're all going to be supportive of each other. So the first one is generosity. Generosity is a nice entry point. I think we all have the nature to be generous. Maybe some more so than others, right? But we it feels good to give to people. It feels good to help people. And so generosity is this beautiful entry point of cultivating the antidote to attachment, right? When we look at the 3 root poisons, attachment, aversion, ignorance. Well, here we are, we got attachment. We have the antidote to attachment right now, generosity. Stinginess, miserliness. Why a lot of suffering there. This heart of generosity is the antidote to a myriad of mental afflictions, of feeling scarcity and fear and insecurity. So as we cultivate generosity, we're going to right away have some mental and emotional benefit just in our daily lives. But now this doesn't mean you give away everything you have. Of course not. It means that we offer what we have in ways that are supportive and helpful to others. Now we make sure our needs are met. And it's important to have our needs met so we can give. So make sure our needs are met. My precious teacher, Geshe Sultan Gyaltsen, would always say, before you offer anything at the Dharma Center, make sure your needs are met. Then contribute. So make sure your needs are met so that you can give. But generosity isn't merely giving financial support. It's the giving of your time, the giving of your energy, the generosity of kindness, compassion. A lot of times it's easier to give somebody something than it is to give them our attention. So cultivating this generosity, and now this generosity is not merely to feel good, right? This generosity is of a heartfelt desire to be of benefit. So as we engage in all of these, we want to remember that the Bodhisattva motivation is that others don't suffer. Compassion is the desire to remove suffering. So these are all skillful methods to remove suffering in the long term. So it's not to enable unhealthy behaviors. It's not to help people do harmful things. It's sometimes to have clear boundaries and accountability, but from a heart of care and concern so that people can heal and be well. So we begin with generosity, this generosity that's recognizing that there is a great need, and sometimes the need is just to be heard, just to be cared for. Sometimes it's safety. There's the generosity of offering Dharma. We've had some incredible gifts of teachings that have helped us, and we can offer them. We don't preach. The Buddha Dharma is not something we preach. Matter of fact, I don't teach unless I'm asked. That is a tradition. So there's no evangelical, come be a Buddhist, but rather we may have some skillful things that we've learned that we can offer to people when they're in need of some care. And these teachings that we have, these things that have helped us, we might be able to share them in a way that they are received in a beneficial way. We don't even need to mention it's Dharma. So generosity. I like to encourage people as I'm going to touch on all of these, to take some time with each one. And as I mentioned, as I focus on one, I will see how the others come into play. So generosity is the first one, ethics. here we are, the core of all spiritual growth. And here we are once again in one of the 3 higher trainings on the path of awakening, ethics. There's the source of all goodness, right? The source of all well-being, the source of all happiness is virtuous action. So a very straightforward hypothesis here in Buddhism that is, well, they don't call it a hypothesis. They say this is the way it is. It's for us to check it out. It's for us to test it, to take it as a working hypothesis. That the source of all happiness is virtuous activity, good ethical behavior, beneficial to self and others. Source of all suffering, non-virtuous actions, unethical behavior, harmful to self and others. Straightforward. So something to explore then in my life is, if I want happiness, if I want well-being, if I want any spiritual growth, if I want to grow positive potentials, all of that is dependent upon ethical behavior, virtuous actions, wholesome actions of body, speech, and mind. And there's the top 10 list of non-virtue and the top 10 list of virtue. And we have that in our prayer book. We list it every day. It's part of the morning practice. So this is foundational. This is foundational to any spiritual path, whether we call it a Buddhist path or a different religious path. You're going to see ethics. You're going to see generosity. You're going to see these are core for us to grow spiritually in a way that's meaningful and creates happiness and well-being. What else I want to say about ethics? Oh, so we have lists, right? We have lists, 10 virtuous, 10 non-virtuous. There's a quick litmus test, and that's always about motivation. What's my motivation? Am I giving so I look good, or am I giving to be of help? Checking our mind, the biggest impact on any activity is going to be our motivation. So a quick litmus test is, what's my motivation before I engage in an action? Is it self-centered, or is it helpful, generous, skillful? So that's an important piece there. What would be most beneficial here? So we've got generosity, ethics, and now patience. Patience, I think, is one of the ones that is very confusing for many people, including myself for many years. People would say, yeah, I'm trying to be patient. I'm being patient right now, which is very tight, being patient, painful, gritty, your teeth. Patience is required for any growth of any sort, right? In order to learn any skill, to learn how to read, to learn how to write, to engage in any real method of cultivating a skill, patience is going to be required. And so this is critical. I also want to point out that patience is an action. It's not a non-action, in a sense. It's an action of being patient, of being able to persevere, being able to endure some difficulties, be able to endure challenges, to allow things to happen without trying to force things to happen. Patience is this action that actually solves more problems than just about any other action. It's amazing how much can resolve on its own by us just being patient and continuously trying to engage in more skillful responses in our lives. So the idea of patience is that it's not gritting my teeth. It's that when I actually have some patience, my mind is undisturbed even in challenging situations or uncomfortable situations or painful situations. The mind is undisturbed. So initially, patience is going to be kind of difficult, right? I think we can all recognize what it's like to be impatient. And that's where I think people get confused when they're thinking I'm being patient, we're really being impatient. I'm trying to be patient. So a real important method for me is to focus intentionally on cultivating patience. That's a practice for the day. And so that's what I'll do. I'll set an intention. Today I'm going to work on cultivating patience. So I'm going to notice my mind and my impulses. I'm going to notice a discomfort, an anxiety, and a dis-ease, and feel it, and just allow myself to feel it and allow it to come and go. And if I do this with smaller things, and I set an intention to practice patience, to do things a little slower, a little more focused, to notice things that are just uncomfortable, and to allow them to come, to allow them to go, then I actually have the ability, by practicing patience when I really don't need it, I develop the skill of patience so that when I do need it, I have it. I know how to use it. I will learn that these things will come and go, and there's no reason to get worked up about something. I can do something about it, or I cannot do something about it. If I can do something about it, I will. And if I can't, why would I get worked up about it? Easier said than done. So it's really, I think, important to have a very dedicated practice, to spend some time cultivating patience, the skill of patience. It really is the ground of cultivating any other skill. So we have generosity, we've got ethics, we've got patience, joyous effort, enthusiastic perseverance. This is something to work on. This is something that I am sometimes not very good at, and sometimes really find benefit in shifting from things I have to do to what an opportunity to do them, to roll up my sleeves and, well, here's an opportunity to cultivate merit, here's an opportunity to cultivate wisdom, to have an attitude of when things get difficult or challenging, that, wow, I get to really work on cultivating this path of awakening right now, of helping people, joyful effort. This also is something when I sit in the morning, sit into, get into practice, to remember that this is not something to do to get out of the way or be done with, but my whole life has been preparing me for this moment. And I get to have the opportunity to meditate. I have the opportunity to say some prayers for others. I have the opportunity to cultivate some patience. And the joy of it, to shift my mind to recognizing the value of a day that will never come again, of an activity that happens only once, that everything that is happening here, today, right now, will only happen once. This situation will never happen again. And we have the opportunity right here, right now, to cultivate a path of awakening, to be a benefit to all beings, to grow. There's no situation that is not an opportunity to grow, to learn, to improve yourself, to improve the world. What a gift, what a joy. Doesn't always feel like a joy, right? We've got things to do, and sometimes things can feel so difficult to do. And so noticing that mind and shifting it to an effort. And sometimes it's an effort that's not very joyful. And I've learned to take joy in doing something that's not joyful. In other words, it doesn't feel good when I'm doing it, but I become willing to do it anyway. And when I'm done, I take a moment to recognize, how do I feel that I did that instead of not doing it? And allow myself some joy there. Now, in just neuroscience, biologically, this is a critical thing to cultivate in our lives. Because what we think, say, and do, it's tied to responses, it's tied to our environment, it's tied to whether we get a little dopamine release of pleasure. Pretty easy to think about in our lives that our mind is pretty aware of what gives us pleasure and what does not. And it's always keen to go for the pleasure, avoid that which is not so pleasurable. Then it drags us around. So if I can re-associate an activity with this joy, I can allow a little pleasure, I can allow a little dopamine. That I'm seated here right now with teachers and speaking with you, and what an incredible gift this is. What an opportunity that we get to support each other in this precious life, in this day that comes but once. And allow myself to feel that. Well, now my mind is associating these activities with a very pleasurable experience. And the neural pathways change in the brain, and we grow new neural pathways. So joyous effort, very, very important. And again, there are times where I am not into wanting to do some prayer, not into wanting to do some prayer, not into wanting to help someone, not into, doing something that I know would be helpful, or answer the phone when I don't want to. And I do it anyway. It's not joyful. But afterwards, I take a moment, go, how do you feel that you did it as opposed to not doing it? There's a little bit of joy that's right there. And I feel good about doing something that didn't feel good. And in that way, many things in my life that have once been challenges or chores have become just the way I live now. And yeah, not perfect by any means. A lot better than I used to be. So joyful effort. This is something that will really sustain us in our practice. Concentration. So concentration, stable mind. And so here we are back to one of the 3 higher trainings, concentration. So here we have to have a mind that's tamed first. So a mind that's dragging me around all the time, chasing what it wants, trying to avoid what it doesn't want, projecting things, reacting, distracting. As we meditate when we first begin, even for 10 or 15 minutes, we may notice that mind of ours is just dragging us around all over, a prisoner to whatever arises. So this opportunity here is to develop a presence of mind, to make friends with our mind, not to force it into submission, but rather to start training the mind to become more present, focused, become our friend, to recognize the reward in being present. Mind's always chasing things, images, thoughts, so forth. It doesn't even know the pleasure of presence. And our very basic nature, without all that cognitive activity, all that hustle and bustle, busy mind, is peaceful, blissful, luminous. That's the nature of mind itself. Blissful, luminous, non-conceptual. It feels good. And if we have the opportunity, day in and day out, to engage on a path of stabilizing the mind, to have a shamatha practice, a calm abiding practice that helps us cultivate concentration, presence of mind, you're just going to cut through so much suffering. Because the suffering's arising from my mind, worrying about what may or may not happen, what I want, what I don't want, what's going on, and just the distraction, the chitter chatter, the things it thinks about. What's the saying? I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. It's the mind just seeking, just self-obsession. And so being able to be more present with what actually is happening in our life, which is right here, right now. Having a mind that is present, that is stable, that we can choose to direct wherever we would like to direct it, and it would be there. That if I want to read a book, I can read a book. If I want to listen to someone, I can listen to someone. Oh, just the peace right there is when I'm attending to someone or something, my mind is not caught up in all those cognitive distortions. And it's only with the stable mind, and His Holiness talked about that earlier, the unification of stable mind, of the shamatha with vipassana, with insight, is how we achieve awakening. Not going to do so well with a crazy distracted mind dragging us around all the time. So now, in order to engage in this practice, a daily shamatha practice, very important. Of course, we record a morning practice every day, and it's on our community, and invite you to join us if you haven't. But there's also just meditations we have that you can download and just practice this practice of shamatha. We even have a 24-day training where for every day for 4 weeks we can sit, meditate together, and go through a teaching every day on this practice of shamatha so that you can cultivate a practice. But also beyond the meditation itself, we need to be present in our daily activities. So lots of mindfulness exercises, becoming aware of the breath as you engage in activities, coming back to what we're doing. Very important to check our mind, see where our mind's at. Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, when she was first training, the yogis taught her to 3 times an hour just stop and see where her mind is. Not a big analytical thing, just stop, pause, where's your mind? Go back to what you're doing. And in that way, the habit of noticing where your mind is was just incredible to bring it back and to be where you are and to know where your mind is. And then the last one's wisdom. So this is, of course, that which frees us. And there's a whole process of starting to understand ourselves, our experience. We've unpacked quite a bit of this in the teachings throughout this course, this nature of an interdependent experience that we're having, and how we exist as dependently arising events. Ourselves, our body, what we're doing right now is all independence upon all these myriad of causes and conditions. There's nothing stagnant here. There's nothing independent. It's all interdependent and dependent upon these other parts and causes and conditions and things that set everything in motion. And we are a stream of experience, not a stagnant lump of John going day in and day out, but rather John, the awareness of John, experiencing me as I'm teaching right now, moving my hands and fingers, directing my attention to a camera. And then you're on the other end somewhere, wherever you are, listening to this, maybe on a podcast or maybe on YouTube or maybe on our website. Think about how many causes and conditions right there for the words I'm using, and had to come out of this body given to me by my parents, and their bodies by their parents, etc. And the teachings and the teachers and all those that have practiced this, refined it, translated it, all the way down to my teachers and the people who have helped me throughout my life, and including school teachers and how to read and write and so forth, let alone who made the computer, the camera, and the internet. And all of this is happening right now. And yet we can think we're so independent and solid, when in fact we're interdependent and flowing, and everything that we are and experience is only arising in dependence upon all of these things. So that's how we can start to, peel the onion and start to recognize our thoughts and feelings come and go. We're not our thoughts and feelings. Our body changes. It's not stagnant. That's changing. Everything about us is changing. And then the ultimate understanding here is that how I'm experiencing the world is subjective, right? It's not an objective world out there. It has a lot to do with my imprints, how I've been conditioned, how I experience the world, whether I think this is a good day or a bad day, whether I think that's a tasty treat or not a tasty treat, and whether I think somebody's funny or whether I find them annoying. Those are all going to have a lot to do with me in relation to what I'm experiencing. And as I change my inner qualities, my outer experience changes. And that's the big dynamic in Buddhism, is it's an inner work, right? That I change my karmic imprints, I cultivate more wisdom. These two accumulations transform my whole experience. I do not need to change the world. I change myself. It's an inside job. One born of cultivating these qualities, these 6 perfections. And in the process, perfection allows me to recognize my own Buddha nature, which has always been here. And it's been obscured and covered up by all my afflictions and conditioning over all this time. And I've been a prisoner of just what my mind grabs onto, attends to, and how I feel, and not understanding the root causes of my feelings and experience, virtue or non-virtue, interdependence, wisdom, and understanding or not. So these 6 perfections then, the first 5 are the method aspect of the path. So here we are, accumulation of merit, method, and then the 6th, wisdom. So here we are, once again, accumulation of merit and wisdom, of method and wisdom, ultimately of compassion and wisdom. And so I wanted to take a little time today to invite you to explore these. They're right here in our refuge and bodhicitta motivation each day. I encourage you to take a look and see. Maybe you don't have to start with generosity, you might start with patience, but to really bring them into your hearts and minds, to cultivate them. And you'll notice that as you're cultivating patience, ethics and generosity will need to be there, effort will need to be there. When you're cultivating ethics, you're going to need some patience and some generosity and so forth. So these are all very intertwined, and they support each other. And they're also the antidotes to the afflictive states of samsara that give rise to samsara. Yeah, a lot of good stuff here. So I do hope that you have found our little deviation from the text into these 6 perfections truly beneficial. I encourage you to explore them. And we had a teaching on them in the Lama room where we unpacked them a little further, but if we can, just bring them into our lives every day. And when we recite this refuge prayer and we talk about creating these positive potentials through generosity, ethics, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom. So sweet. Maybe we can bring those to mind and then pick one for a week and let's see how that works out for you. Okay, well, I think I am probably come up to the time. I do hope that you stay on a little bit and visit with each other. I believe Rachel will be hosting this. And so any insights or discussion that you can do to support each other, please feel free to share a few things or thoughts around these teachings that we've been going through. And I also wanted to note that there will be a meditation retreat this month. We're going to do a little different format. We've been doing a little half-day, 3-hour meditation instruction and sit in the morning, 9 a.m. to noon. And so we'll continue to do that. We'll have one, and it'll be led by Aaron, who is incredible this shamatha practice and meditation, vast experience, and so thoughtful in his presentation. So he will run the retreat while I'm gone. So 3 hours in the morning with some instruction and how to establish a practice, just as we've been doing. But we're going to add an afternoon retreat. So the afternoon will be much less instruction and just more sitting so that we can support each other in a sitting practice. And we'll do some back-to-back sessions of 24 minutes stretch for a few minutes, 24 minutes stretch, about 3 back-to-back sessions, and then unpack the practice of meditation. So if someone wanted to attend all day, you could go to the morning with a little more instruction, bigger breaks in between meditation, and then come to the afternoon where, having had some practice, do some sessions back to back, 24 minutes, little break, 24 minutes, little break. And then debrief this session of meditation so we can support each other in an ongoing practice. So you might just want to come to the afternoon, sit together and really get into a process of meditation, or you might just want to come to the morning, have a little more support, or you might want to do both. And so that'll be posted. We'll post it on our website, and all of our teachings, all of our offerings are always by donation. So any amount, whatever, again, make sure your needs are met and make an offering. But it'll be really wonderful. And I plan on having this type of meditation support every month. So every month we'll have a day with both of those sessions, and people can attend one or both, whichever suits them. And we just want to support people in really having a solid meditation practice. So those are my 2 announcements. And as I said, next week, I plan on teaching live from Ladakh, India, and hopefully internet and all the conditions will ripen for that. Let us now take a little time to dedicate the merit that we have already cultivated through this opportunity to come together with the Dharma, the path of a Bodhisattva. So just taking a moment to recognize the merit and the wisdom that we have cultivated for ourselves and our desire to share it with all others, that we engage in this path for the benefit of all sentient beings. Let us now dedicate. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you all so much. Such a gift to be able to be with you and to share in these precious teachings. Please be well, take good care of yourselves and good care of those around you. And I hope to see you next week.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu